Hello, these are my reflections on Advent Sunday. Advent comes from two words meaning ad, which is towards, and venir, which means to come. Advent means the season of coming towards. But towards what? Put away the works of darkness and put on the armour of light, says the collect. Mark talks about darkness. The sun and the moon and the stars will be put out. The absence of light, the feeling that everything is collapsing. Only Jesus' words will remain, whispered in the darkness, the link of hearing, remembering, when all else is gone. Stay awake, Mark says. Keep awake. How? Perhaps the small flashlight you had as a child, under the darkness of night, beneath the blankets, a small light, a secret light, in the darkness and the smile on your face. I have a memory of being a small child at a birthday party. We excited children were hushed and lights went out, sudden and unexpected. I felt unsure, confused, perhaps unsafe, and then a door opened and in came the cake, laden with candles, the only light we had, and it was beautiful. Stay awake, keep aware, says Jesus in Mark's story. Staying awake, looking for the light, not being sleepy, are not quite the same thing. I can go up to my study to prepare a sermon, and I can quite easily remain busy and focused. But where my focus goes is another matter. I may be halfway through reading the Gospel and a ping goes off to let me know that an email has arrived. So I look at it and decide to reply. And that leads me into a very different subject, which today was an old friend I haven't seen since we were at university together. Very engaged and excited, I write back. Then I see who else has an unopened email for me. I wasn't asleep, but not awake to the sermon I'm trying to stay with, to focus on. The presence of the Holy Spirit moving through the sacred words I'm trying to pay attention to. My eyes were not closed, but I was asleep to God, whose words I was hoping to catch. Close to daydreaming, sleepwalking, dozing. Mark shouts out to me, stay awake, keep your wits about you, be aware, stay awake. At the introduction to the service, there is a note about lighting a candle. I wonder how many people actually do that. Do you? Did you do that today? The candle is both an illumination tool, light in the darkness, and it's a focus of your attention and a symbol of the divine nature of fire, warmth, light, and danger, a consuming force. Isaiah has an image I like. The potter at the wheel. Many of you will know that I'm also a potter and have from time to time taught classes. Right at the beginning, no one goes towards a wheel first. First you take your bag of clay and cut off a workable amount, about the size of half a loaf of bread, or a third. How much can you pray for today? I mean, really pray for. What amount of prayer do you cut off to start with? World peace is generally too big a peace to pray for. Mostly we can pray for our lack of peace with great Uncle Griswold. Find something that's the right size for you to pray for. The next thing you do with clay is you soften the clay up. You wake it up by kneading it like you might knead bread dough. You work it round and round and homogenize it, and you get it all feeling smooth and flowing. Then you go to the wheel and you whack it down hard, as near to the middle as you can. You have to throw it hard enough to make it stick to the wheel. You have to get your attention to stick to your prayer. You have to be committed. And then the potter starts to turn the wheel. You can't turn the wheel too fast because your clay's never actually right in the middle and all centered. And if you go too fast, it starts to go and throws itself off. The lump you threw down in the middle is never actually in the middle. You may think it is, but there's some preparation work. And the work is pushing from the sides as the lumps and bumps come around and being stronger than them, and you force them in and upwards. And it takes a few weeks to learn how to center. And then once you have this kind of cone of clay, this lump that's in the middle of the wheel, and as it goes round and round, and you run your finger against the edge of it, you don't feel any vibrations at all. And then you know it's perfect. And when it's perfect, you make a hole in the middle. You wrap your hands around it and you push your thumbs slowly down, very, very gently. And you do what's called opening the clay. You're making the hole in the middle. You tunnel down with your fingers. And then you have to push outwards with one hand inside and inwards with one hand outside. And you squeeze the clay. And like this, you pull it up. And it goes higher and higher. You have magically made walls begin to rise. And most importantly, you have created space in the middle. Any piece of pottery, it is the emptiness of the clay vessel which makes it useful. I could sell you a lovely looking coffee mug without any space in the middle, just a lump of clay with a handle, and it would be no use. It's the space in the middle of a vessel that makes it useful. And when you come to prayer, you need some spaciousness in your soul. You need some emptiness in your head. You can't be thinking about the washing up and what you're going to be doing for Christmas and when the house last got cleaned and have you done that little piece of work and did you phone Aunt so-and-so. You have to be empty. You have to not have a train of thought rattling around in your head. And sometimes you just have to keep recentering yourself and emptying the space in the middle so that into that silence and that stillness and that space, the Spirit of God might just come. You have to pay attention when you're throwing clay. You have to pay attention when you're praying. Not just praying, but paying attention to praying. You have to stay awake. You have to stay open. Pottery is mastered by practice. To find yourself and to find God at any useful depth, you need practice. In the service, towards the end, I've given you 4 versions of the Lord's Prayer. Unfortunately, Jesus didn't speak English and lived in a culture vastly different from our own. All we have is translations, none of which are right, but all of which incline us towards Jesus. When I say not right, it's not so much not right, but they don't catch all the subtleties of a different culture. And sometimes one word in Aramaic or Hebrew translates into 3 words in English, and they're all slightly different. There's a little wiggle room here. I invite you to make your translations and try and work out what the word means. Play with them. To do this, you need time. And I would invite you to take an hour each day. Perhaps choose 4 days for this and have 3 days off. Find a place where you can sit still for 30 minutes in a chair which is comfortable enough you don't have to wiggle in, but not so comfortable that you'll fall asleep. Set a bell on your watch or a kitchen timer so that you do not need to worry about the time. Look at these Lord's Prayers and decide to take one for that day. Then settle down comfortably, but with a straight back. Your phone should be off, your door should be closed, and interruptions should be excluded. Pray the prayer in a straight line into God's heart. Then pause. Notice what is happening. If you notice your mind wandering, then, like a distracted sheep, gently bring it back and focus. Start again. In 30 minutes, expect to start again several times. You get better with practice. When you're reading the Lord's Prayer, read it through and then go back and read it again. And you may find that some lines really attract your attention or catch you and make you wonder. Savor a line. Roll it around in your mind like a candy in your mouth. Let it be like looking at a jewel from different directions. Just see how much is said in each line. In 30 minutes you may only read 3 or 4 lines, and that is a half hour well spent. Slowly you might move away from what you think the phrase says to wondering what Jesus thinks the phrase says. What Jesus thinks, because Jesus is there with you. And slow, repeated practice like this lets you begin to notice him. What are you saying to me, Jesus? What does this mean? I've been wondering about that. When you find yourself talking to Jesus like that, when you're looking at a passage of the Bible or looking at the Lord's Prayer, then you're praying. Learning to pray, to be present before the one you cannot see or touch, is a practice thing. Slowly, slowly, it gets easier. It is coming into the light. It is the clay of your soul beginning to center itself. And you are learning how to become open in the middle, in the center of yourself. And God is planting a tiny source of light in the space that you are making. Advent, to come towards, you to God, God towards you. I wish you peace.